mentioned, at times in recent days, Kellyanne Conway has struggled to be on the same page, to say the least, as the rest of the staff in the White House. Take a look.
General Flynn does enjoy the full confidence of the president.
He's speaking to Vice President Pence relative to the conversation the Vice President had with General Flynn, and also speaking to various other people about what he considers the single most important subject there is, our national security.
I'm not here to say who knew what when, because first of all, that would be divulging information that is highly sensitive, and secondly, I don't know all the details.
Immediately after the Department of Justice notified the White House counsel of the situation, the White House counsel briefed the president and a small group of his senior advisors.
The Vice President, Mike Pence, was misled by General Flynn, or General Flynn could not completely recall what his conversations had been with the Russian ambassador.
But Kellyanne, the White House knew that almost 3 weeks ago.
I think misleading the Vice President really was the key here.
You're saying that was the straw that broke the camel's back, but the White House knew about that last month when the Justice Department warned the White House that Mr. Flynn or General Flynn had not been completely honest in characterizing that conversation with the Russian ambassador, and they even went further to say that as a result of that dishonesty, he was at risk for blackmailing by the Russians.
Well, that's one characterization, but the fact is that General Flynn continued in that position and was in the presidential daily briefings, was part of the leader calls as recently as yesterday, was there for the Prime Minister's visit from Canada yesterday, and as time wore on, obviously the situation had become unsustainable.
Kellyanne,
and General Flynn...
That makes no sense.
So, Rick, Joe was just saying that she books herself on these shows. We know for a fact she tries to book herself on this show. I won't do it because I don't believe in fake news or information that is not true. And that is every time I've ever seen her on television, something's askew, off, or incorrect. Another piece of news concerning Kellyanne Conway. The government's top ethics office is urging the White House to investigate the president's counselor for publicly endorsing Ivanka Trump's clothing line. I still can't believe this happened. In a letter to the White House, the director of the Office of Government Ethics wrote there's, quote, strong reason to believe that Conway violated rules against misusing her position, that, quote, disciplinary action is warranted. The chairman of the House Oversight Committee, who urged the Ethics Office to investigate, has now called on the White House to follow the agency's guidance. Joe, you have some reporting on this as well.
Well, it's actually the same thing I've heard since Donald Trump was elected by his top aides, and again confirmed it last night. She's out of the loop. She's in none of the key meetings. She goes out and books herself often. And, I said this morning, I saw some of the headlines yesterday and felt badly because the language I used was so harsh. And I'm going to take it back about her, quote, lying. I think, Rick Tyler, it is equally as bad that a spokesperson in the White House actually goes out and makes things up. She doesn't know. She doesn't have the information. She's not in any of the key meetings. She's not briefed. And so she'll go out like she did yesterday. She'll hear me say something about her, as apparently this is what I heard from inside the White House. And then she'll immediately start calling, and she'll call people that go on TV and defend herself. And so then she goes on the Today Show, gives misinformation, as she does on all of these shows. And again, I don't even think she's saying something that she knows to be untrue. She's just saying things just to get in front of the TV set and prove her relevance, because behind the scenes, she's not in these meetings. And any reporter can ask anybody in that White House, and they will say the same thing. She's not in the meeting. So, Rick, the question is, why does the president allow her to keep going out and spreading false information?
It's really quite unbelievable. I mean, what's happening here is any White House is going to be stress test, right? But now we're under a severe stress test, and this is really a crisis of incompetence. And that's just the tip of it. All the rest of it has the hallmarks of a scandal. And you also have a situation where the reporters in the room seem to know more than the press secretaries answering their questions. And that there's not a coherent message coming out of the White House, and that the people aren't coordinating. And all this leads to a lot of questions. General Flynn was clearly in touch with the Russians through the campaign. And it's hard for me to believe that the president-elect didn't, or the candidate at that time didn't know that was going on. And then during the transition, if he was going to call the Russian ambassador, you would think topic number one would have been the sanctions. And so he would have been prepared to talk about the sanctions, because that would clearly come up. And the president saying he doesn't know, he didn't know about these reports that A, he talked to the Russian ambassador, and B, whether he talked about sanctions. And if that were, it's hard for me to believe the president didn't know. And if that's true, then the president also misled the vice president.
Really quick comment, 5 seconds. Do you want to wait?
Okay.
Okay, we'll wait. Still ahead. We have so much to get to. Yeah. Everybody, I will say, Kellyanne Conway does not need to text our show, at least as long as I'm on it, because it's not happening here. Still ahead on Morning Joe. 2 big exclusive interviews. House Speaker Paul Ryan joins us live, and Joe's sit down with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Plus, the Senate's number 2 Democrat, Dick Durbin, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Bob Corker, and Connecticut's Chris Murphy, who's among the toughest critics of the new administration. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.